Hi, Ask an RTC here, and in this video, we're going to be going over some of the myths or things I've been hearing about, like rumors, when it comes to U.S. Navy boot camp, specifically things that you can and cannot do, or things that are allowed. Some of the examples might be, for instance, the first thing we talk about would be cell phones. Now, a lot of talk is about cell phones and whether or not to bring them at all when it comes to Navy boot camp, or whether or not you can even utilize them at Navy boot camp. The reality is, if you bring it, you utilize it for your first call home. And then after that, you would pack it away into the box, which goes into storage until after you graduate. And they bring it out like a few days before graduation, bring your box so that when you check out of the command, you can bring the box with you with all your belongings that you wanted to keep. But yes, cell phones, if you bring them, you can utilize them at the airport. You can utilize them for your first call home when you do not have arrivals. And then after that, it's packed away, powered off, and you can't touch it again. So if you if you're okay with keeping them in the box for the 2 to 3 months that you're going to be there, then there's no problem, especially if it's something that you could just utilize right when you get out of boot camp again, have all your contacts in there. You don't have to worry about sending it home or anything like that, which is not really a thing they do anymore. They don't send anything home. They'll keep it all in a box. But you do get phone calls. You will get normal phone calls. So that first one you can do with a cell phone, or if you didn't have a cell phone, you can borrow the cell phone of someone next to you just to make that phone call home. You get 1 minute to say, hey, I'm safe. I'm here at RTC Great Lakes. You'll get a letter from me, and I'll make a first phone call in a few weeks. After that, there's a phone center. The phone center, it allows you to call home. You can bring a phone card if you want, but you could also just buy a phone card while you're there. When you first get there, you get like a Navy Eagle card. It's just like a preloaded card that you can only use at RTC. And it allows you to buy basic necessities, deodorant and whatnot, and you get a phone card. When you use that phone card, when you're in the phone center, you can see this picture here, and it allows you to make phone calls home. You get 2 to 3. You might get more, depending if you get ASMOD or if your RDCs take you to get more. But you'll get one in the beginning, in the middle, and then you get one after you pass battle stations. You get that phone call home to say, hey, I made it, everything like that. It's a pretty good feeling when you get that. And sometimes if my division was killing it, I would definitely just see if the schedule allowed it, I would try to schedule an extra phone call. The next thing I hear a lot about is they will teach you how to swim at boot camp. Now, this is not really true. I highly recommend learning how to swim, just at least the basics. You don't need to be an Olympic swimmer or anything like that, but you'll be jumping in the water twice and swimming across the pool itself, and it's an Olympic-sized pool, or at the very least, it's very long. I don't know if it's exactly Olympic size, but you will be swimming, 20 to 50 yards across. And so I would recommend being able to tread water because you have to float, swim comfortably. You don't have to swim very far, but you have to be able to swim the length of the pool that's inside at RTC, and you have to jump in the water twice. So if you cannot do that, they will give the basics on like how to get you to swim, or to the basics on, at the very least, to get you to pass the swim. And we don't really swim a lot in the Navy, to be honest. It's more so this is swimming for survival training. Can you swim to the life raft? Can you get to the safety is necessary? Can you swim the 50 yards if you need to swim away from the ship and get onto the life raft if it sinks? If you fall overboard, can you tread water long enough to get rescued? It's simple things like that. Unless you're going to be in a rate that's specific for swimming, like a Navy diver or rescue swimmer, special warfare, well then, yeah, of course you're going to need to know how to swim, and hopefully you already know by then. But I recommend that you learn how to swim before, and if you can't swim by the time you get there, they will teach you enough to get you by so you can pass boot camp. But it's still recommended you just learn how to swim before you get there. The next thing I want to talk about is, did they extend boot camp? And now this is widely known now, but yes, it is true. They were talking about it for the longest time, where it used to be 8 weeks, give or take a week or two, depending on how quickly you graduate, depending on your schedule. Because some people, you have your P days and then you have your normal days of training. And that could be anywhere to graduating on the 6 week to graduating on the 8 week, but in average is about 8 weeks of training. And they were talking about for a while making it 12-week or a 13-week boot camp, and none of that really came to fruition, probably just due to COVID during the time. But now, yes, it is 10 weeks of boot camp. They added 2 extra weeks at the end, and it's the life skills. I talked about that before in a previous video, where I was going over what happens during boot camp and at the end of the Make a Sailor. After graduation, you have about 2 weeks of additional training, and it's life skills. It's life skills for really anyone just really new to the Navy, some extra things that happen in the Navy so you're just not walking completely blind into the new world as a sailor. And also anything if you're like a junior sailor, or I should say a young sailor, whether it be 17, 18, 19, 20. And this might be your first time having a full-time job, and you're now getting an income. It's just understanding there might be scams out there for the military. What is a payday loan, and to avoid them, proper ways to purchase a car, and how you can even get scammed out of a car. And they love scamming military out of the car. They know that you're going to make those payments because you're a guaranteed paycheck with your contract, and then also if you decide you don't want to pay anymore, they just contact the military and they'll make you pay. So there's times you can have bad deals when it comes to buying a car, and so that's just one example. But yeah, the extra 2 weeks just helps you kind of more so live in the life of a sailor before just going straight out to the fleet. And last thing I really hear about usually is a stress card. As you can see here, I just found a random image online. Uh, Heard stories before. I think none of them are true. You always hear stories about whether or not this is true, or is this how the Navy's going with things, or any military boot camp. They use a stress card where if you're getting yelled at in the face by your RDC or drill instructor, or things are getting really, really, really tough, right? That you could pull this card out so you can de-stress. It's not a thing. It's never. I don't think it's ever been a thing. I think it's just been a joke that people say all the time. It's not a real thing. And if you somehow get your hands on a printout of one, whether someone gave it to you, do not bring it to boot camp. I assure you that will just give you more attention. You kind of wish that stress card existed. It's not a real thing. I think it's a joke. Every generation will always say that the current generation is easier, has easier boot camp. It was way tougher back in the day, or now the Navy's soft. It's honestly, it's a difference of generation. That's really all it is. The training has evolved over time, but to put it best, one man once said, and I'm paraphrasing, that kids these days like dainties. They don't stand up when adults enter the room. They find themselves playing outside or playing in an area that's supposed to be quiet, and they never listen to their teachers. And that was actually written by Socrates. So it's always this idea that the previous generation, or the newest generation, doesn't have it as hard as the previous generation. That argument can go back and forth all day, but in reality, that's probably what this came from. It's just a joke. This is a stress card. It's not real. But yeah, those are some of the myths I heard about when it comes to Navy boot camp. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Hoo-yah, Navy.